They laughed at him. The old man, the horse trainer who had seen it all. With his weathered face, hands rough from years of hard work, and his deep voice that seemed to hold the wisdom of countless seasons, he was no longer taken seriously by most. The younger trainers mocked him, calling him outdated, old-fashioned, and too slow to keep up with the modern methods they swore by. But there was something about the old trainer's calm demeanor and the way he spoke about his horse that kept a small group of loyal supporters still around. You see, he had a special bond with his horse. It wasn't just a simple trainer-animal relationship. It was something deeper, something almost unexplainable. People didn't understand it, and they certainly didn't respect it. After all, they all had their own methods, their own better techniques. The new trainers relied on technology, fancy gadgets, and quick fixes. But the old trainer? He believed in patience, trust, and understanding, the kind of understanding you could only build over time, with a bond so strong that it could make magic happen. But no one really believed in magic anymore. Not in this world. Not when results were measured in numbers and immediate success was expected. And yet, the old man had something no one else had: respect from the horse itself. That horse, who had been with him through countless challenges, was no ordinary animal. They said it was a miracle horse. Fast, strong, intuitive, some even whispered that it could read the old trainer's mind. The mockery continued for weeks. Each time, the old man just smiled and shook his head, never getting angry, never retaliating. He was used to it. But that morning, something was different. As the sun broke through the horizon, casting golden light over the stable, the old man led the horse out for its morning training session. There was a noticeable tension in the air, but no one could quite put their finger on it. The crowd gathered as usual, some curious, others simply wanting to watch the old trainer fail. They had all heard the whispers about the horse's abilities, but they thought it was just an old man's fantasy. Then, as if on cue, the horse began to move. Slow at first, like a calm breeze. But soon, there was an undeniable energy in the air. The horse wasn't just walking, it was almost gliding across the ground, with a grace and speed that made even the harshest critics stop in their tracks. And the old trainer, standing by, never once touched the reins. As the horse moved in circles, almost as if it were performing a routine of its own, the crowd's mocking laughter turned into stunned silence. No one could take their eyes off the display. But then, something happened. The horse did something unexpected, something that no one, not even the old trainer, had anticipated. And it was in that moment, when the impossible seemed to unfold before everyone's eyes, that the real question began: what was the horse trying to tell them? And just when it seemed like the story was about to reach its peak, the horse did something that no one could explain. The crowd, now completely captivated, waited in disbelief. What would happen next? Could this old trainer's bond with his horse actually be the key to something even greater? Or was this all just a fluke? Stay tuned. The crowd didn't move. Eyes locked on the horse, breaths held tight, as if a single sound might break whatever spell had settled over the field. The old trainer remained still, watching his horse with the same quiet patience he always had. But there was something in his gaze, something even he didn't fully understand. The horse had done exactly what he had trained it to do until now. This moment, this strange, unexpected moment, was different. The horse stood tall, muscles tense, ears flicking forward as if it had sensed something no one else could. Then, with a sudden jerk of its head, it stomped its front hoof against the dirt. Once, twice, a third time. The sound echoed through the silence like a heartbeat, steady and deliberate. A few of the younger trainers exchanged confused glances. It was just a stomp, nothing impressive. But the old trainer's face changed. His weathered features tightened, and his hands, always so steady, gripped the edge of the fence just a little harder. Something wasn't right. The horse let out a low, deep sound, not quite a neigh, not quite a snort. It was almost as if it was trying to speak. Then, in a flash, it moved. Not with the usual trained precision, but with urgency, as if reacting to something unseen. The powerful animal bolted across the field, kicking up dust in its wake. But this wasn't panic. It was purposeful. The crowd murmured, shifting uneasily. They had come expecting to laugh, expecting to watch an old man cling to his outdated ways. But now, they were seeing something they couldn't explain. One of the younger trainers, the loudest of the skeptics, let out a nervous chuckle. "What's it doing?" he muttered, but his voice lacked its usual arrogance. The old trainer didn't answer. He couldn't. Because the truth was, he didn't know. His horse had always been special, faster, smarter, more connected to him than any other animal he had ever trained. But this was new. Then, without warning, the horse came to an abrupt stop, dirt flying up around its hooves. It turned its head sharply, eyes locked onto something behind the crowd. A few people glanced over their shoulders, following the horse's gaze. But there was nothing there. Just the open field stretching into the distance, the wind stirring the grass. Yet the horse remained fixated. Its chest heaved, nostrils flaring. It pawed at the ground again, more forcefully this time. The old trainer took a slow step forward. His heart was pounding now, though his face remained calm. He had spent his whole life understanding horses, reading their every movement, every flick of the tail, every twitch of an ear. And right now, everything in his gut told him one thing: the horse wasn't just reacting to something. It was warning them. A sudden gust of wind swept through the field, chilling the air despite the warmth of the morning sun. The horse's stance grew even more rigid, eyes unblinking. Then, just as the tension reached its peak, something happened. Something that made the crowd gasp. Something that made even the loudest skeptics fall silent. And in that moment, for the first time in years, the old trainer felt something he hadn't in a long time. A deep, unshakable sense of dread. No one spoke. The horse stood frozen, its gaze locked on something beyond the crowd, something invisible to the human eye. The old trainer could feel it now, that strange shift in the air, as if the entire world had paused to listen. The once mocking spectators now fidgeted, exchanging nervous glances. Even the younger trainers, who'd been so eager to ridicule, seemed uneasy. The old man's hands clenched at his sides. He had trained this horse since it was young, watched it grow, taught it to understand the subtlest commands. But never, not once, had he seen it act like this. The way it had moved, the way it had stopped so suddenly. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. A gust of wind blew through the field, kicking up a swirl of dust. The horse snorted sharply, stomping its hoof again. The old trainer knew horses didn't act this way without reason. They were sensitive creatures, attuned to things beyond what people could comprehend. Was it instinct? A memory? A warning? The crowd's unease deepened. One of the younger trainers scoffed, trying to shake off his nerves. "Maybe it just doesn't like the attention," he muttered, crossing his arms. His voice lacked its usual confidence. The old trainer didn't respond. His eyes remained on his horse. Slowly, he took a step forward, speaking in a low, steady voice. "Easy now." The horse flicked an ear, but didn't break its focus. Its muscles were tense, its breathing controlled but heavy. It wasn't afraid. It was watching. Then, it did something that sent a chill through the crowd. It took a slow step backward. Then another. A powerful, intelligent animal like this, backing away from nothing? The sight of it sent a ripple of discomfort through those gathered. "Why is it moving like that?" someone whispered. The trainer's mind raced. He had seen horses react to predators before, had watched them sense storms before they came. But this was different. It wasn't fear. It was something else entirely. The younger trainer, the loudest skeptic, let out a nervous laugh. "Come on, it's just acting up. Maybe it wants to run." But the old trainer wasn't so sure. He took another step toward his horse, reaching out his hand. The horse's ears flicked toward him, but it didn't move. It was waiting, watching, listening. Then, in an instant, it bolted. The force of its movement sent dirt flying, its powerful legs carrying it across the field with terrifying speed. The crowd gasped, stepping back instinctively as the horse veered toward the fence toward them. But just before it reached them, it skidded to a stop, nostrils flaring, head held high. It had run toward them, not away. A warning. The old trainer's pulse pounded in his ears. His horse had sensed something, and whatever it wasn't out there. It was here, and they weren't alone. The old trainer's breath was steady, but his heart pounded like a distant drum. His horse, the one he had raised with patience and trust, stood rigid in front of the crowd, nostrils flaring, muscles coiled like a spring wound too tight. But it wasn't fear in its stance, it was something worse. The people behind him shuffled uneasily, eyes darting from one another, trying to convince themselves that nothing was wrong. But they felt it now. The shift in the air. The unnatural stillness of the field. Even the wind had died, as if the world itself was holding its breath. One of the younger trainers, the same one who had been so quick to mock, swallowed hard. "Okay, what's going on?" His voice was different now, uncertain, edged with something close to fear. The old trainer didn't answer. His hand, rough and calloused from years of work, reached toward his horse. The animal flicked its ears toward him but didn't move. It was waiting. Then, in an instant, the horse jerked its head, eyes wild, and let out a sharp, powerful snort. It spun in place, kicking up dust, its hooves striking the ground with a force that sent vibrations through the earth. The trainer had seen this before. Horses reacted this way when they were cornered, when they sensed something coming, but there was nothing there. The old trainer's stomach twisted. No, there was something. Just because they couldn't see it didn't mean it wasn't real. The crowd was no longer laughing. Some had stepped back, others murmured in hushed voices as if afraid to speak too loudly. Even the loudest skeptics were silent now, because whatever was causing this reaction, it wasn't just a trick of the mind. Then, the horse did something no one expected. It charged. Not away. Toward them. People screamed, stumbling back as the massive animal rushed forward, powerful legs tearing through the dirt. But just before it reached them, it reared up on its hind legs, letting out a cry that sent a chill down every spine. It wasn't attacking. It was protecting. The old trainer didn't flinch. He knew. His horse wasn't acting out of fear. It was standing between them and something unseen. And then, as the last echoes of its cry faded into the heavy silence, the trainer felt it. A shift. A presence. A shadow that wasn't supposed to be there. The horse backed up, positioning itself beside the trainer, its breathing deep and steady, waiting for his command. But he had none to give, because for the first time in all his years, he wasn't sure what he was facing. The crowd stood frozen, eyes darting around, trying to see what had unsettled the horse so deeply. Then, from behind them, something moved. A sound. A whisper of footsteps in the silence. Too close. Too real. And just as the old trainer turned, ready to face whatever was coming, the lights cut out. Darkness swallowed the field. The murmurs of the crowd turned into sharp gasps, the air thick with unease. The sudden loss of light wasn't normal. It wasn't a simple power failure or a passing cloud. It felt deliberate, calculated, as if something or someone had been waiting for the right moment. The old trainer didn't move. He knew his horse was still beside him, its presence solid and steady. The warmth of its body, the rhythmic rise and fall of its breath, those were the only things grounding him in this moment. The horse hadn't panicked. It hadn't bolted. That meant whatever this was, it wasn't a mindless danger. It was something thinking, watching. Then, from the blackness, a sound. Not footsteps this time. Something slower. A dragging, scraping noise, like metal being pulled against stone. It came from the far side of the field, past the fence. The crowd heard it too. Someone let out a sharp, nervous laugh, too loud, too forced. "Okay, what kind of joke is this?" But no one answered. The scraping sound stopped. Silence stretched tight around them, pressing against their ears. And then, the floodlights blazed back on. The field was empty. No figures. No movement. Nothing out of place. And yet, the horse stood frozen, eyes locked on the same spot, its entire body coiled like a bowstring. It knew. The old trainer scanned the area, his pulse drumming in his ears. Something was wrong. The lights were back, but they didn't feel right. The shadows were longer than before, stretching unnaturally across the ground, twisting at odd angles. The air was still thick with something unseen, something just beyond reach. Then, someone in the crowd gasped. "Wait, where's—" Another noise. A rustling. But not from the trees, not from the wind. It came from within the crowd. People turned sharply, their eyes darting between one another. Everyone was there, no one was missing. And yet, something had changed. The old trainer's horse let out a deep, guttural sound, not a whinny, not a snort. A warning. And then, in the farthest corner of the field, near the fence, a single figure stood. No one had seen them arrive. No one had heard them step forward. They were just there. Tall. Still. Their features obscured by distance and the flickering light. The trainer's chest tightened. His horse shifted beside him, muscles twitching, ears pinned back. It knew. The figure didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stood there, watching. Then, without a word, without a sound, it raised one hand and pointed. Directly at the trainer. The crowd tensed, the unspoken question hanging in the air. Who was this? And what did they want? The figure remained still, their hand raised, their presence heavy in the charged silence. The horse tensed beside the old trainer, its breath quick and sharp, hooves shifting against the dirt. The trainer had seen many things in his lifetime: unruly animals, unpredictable races, the arrogance of men who thought they knew more than nature itself. But this? This was something else. The crowd barely breathed. No one dared move. Even the skeptics who had laughed before were silent now, caught in the grip of something they didn't understand. The figure's outstretched hand didn't waver, the gesture deliberate, almost unnatural. But it wasn't just a random act. It was a summons. The trainer's horse reacted first. With a sudden, forceful stomp, it took a step forward, its muscles flexing with purpose. It wasn't afraid. It was challenging. The trainer could feel it, the silent conversation between him and the animal, the deep, unspoken trust they had built over years. And then the figure moved. Not a step. Not a lurch, but something stranger, smoother, almost like a shadow shifting in place. And in that instant, the trainer knew. This wasn't just a person. This was something more. Something that had been waiting, watching. The horse lunged, not out of aggression, but as if breaking some unseen force holding everything still. Dirt exploded under its hooves as it rushed forward, the trainer barely processing his own movement as he followed, his body reacting on instinct. The figure remained motionless, as though unfazed by the oncoming force of the charging animal. But then, just before impact, the figure vanished. Gasps erupted from the crowd. The trainer's horse skidded to a stop, its head jerking side to side, nostrils flaring. It knew something had happened, but it couldn't see where. Neither could the trainer. The ground beneath him felt different now. He looked around, scanning the field, searching for any sign of movement. But the space where the figure had stood was empty, as if they had never been there at all. Then the wind returned. It swept through the field in a single, eerie gust, lifting a swirl of dust into the air. And within that dust, just for a fleeting second, was a shape, a shadow flickering in and out of sight, and a whisper. Not words, not a voice, but a sensation curling around the trainer like something ancient, something unfinished. The horse backed up, pressing close to his side, its body still on high alert. It was over. Whatever this was, it had passed. Or so it seemed. Because as the trainer turned to face the stunned crowd, a deep, unsettling realization settled in his gut. The figure had disappeared. But the feeling hadn't. And in the far distance, just beyond the fence where the grass met the darkening sky, the shadows shifted once more. Watching. Waiting. The trainer let out a slow breath, his heart still pounding in his chest. The crowd behind him remained frozen, their whispers hushed, as if speaking too loudly might stir something back into existence. The horse, his most trusted companion, stood at his side, ears twitching, muscles tense. Even now, with the figure gone, the unease hadn't left. He turned back to the crowd, searching their faces. Some looked at him for answers. Others stared beyond the fence, their eyes wide with the lingering fear of the unknown. But what could he say? What words could explain something that had no logic, no reason? One of the younger trainers stepped forward, his usual arrogance nowhere to be found. What was that? His voice was quiet, almost hesitant. The old trainer shook his head. I don't know. And it was the truth. The wind had settled, the dust had cleared, but the feeling of being watched hadn't entirely faded. Still, he knew better than to let fear take hold. The horse beside him had faced whatever it was head on. Maybe that was the lesson here when faced with the unknown. You don't run. You stand your ground. Slowly, the crowd began to disperse. People murmured among themselves, their voices laced with uncertainty. Some tried to brush it off, calling it a trick of the light, an illusion, a coincidence. Others walked away in silence, knowing deep down that what they had witnessed was something more. The old trainer gave his horse a reassuring pat, feeling the warmth of its coat beneath his fingers. You felt it first, didn't you? He muttered under his breath. The horse gave a slow exhale, as if answering. The younger trainer lingered, shifting on his feet before finally speaking again. You've been doing this a long time, he said carefully. Have you ever seen anything like that before? The old trainer thought about it, about the times he had noticed his horses reacting to things unseen. The moments when the wind carried whispers he couldn't explain. He had ignored them before, brushed them off like everyone else. But now he wasn't so sure. Not like this, he admitted. But animals, they know things we don't. The younger trainer nodded, glancing back toward the empty spot where the figure had stood. Maybe we should start listening to them more. The old trainer allowed a small, knowing smile. Maybe we should. With one last look at the field, he led his horse back toward the stables. The night had fallen completely now, stars dotting the sky, the world seemingly normal again. But as he walked, he felt it a presence, distant yet lingering, like a shadow just beyond the edge of sight. Perhaps it was over. Or perhaps some things never truly leave. Either way, he knew one thing for certain. He would never ignore his horse's instincts again.